Well, welcome to our weekly update on the reading the Bible in 6 months. This week we finished up the Nehemiah and his urban renewal program in Jerusalem as the people returned from the exile. And we kind of get to see how it is that the temple and Jerusalem are so intimately connected that what one does affects the other, or reflects, we should almost say. And then the book of Esther we saw a kind of a fun book. It's the story of why there is the Jewish festival of Purim. As I said, it's a melodrama. And it's kind of interesting to look at it from a couple different perspectives. Just as a story, it's full of excitement and a little irony for poor Haman there. But if you think about our culture today and the Me Too movement, how and looking at people as unique and where power structures are. It has a kind of whole different tenor to it, so it can be used for educational purposes. And then we get into the book of Job, and Job is a long book. We'll be doing that for about the next week, this week and next week. And just think of Job as like I said, kind of a dramatic, poetic play. And think of it as it's set in kind of that idea of a court, like say the Persian court, the Babylonian court. And God has a henchman called the Satan. So his name isn't Satan, his title is Satan. And his job is to test people, the accuser, to see where people's loyalties truly lie by giving them these intensive tests, and how God has such faith in Job to resist those tests, and in spite of his friends, which are trying to find a way to justify his suffering, that sometimes we just cannot find. There's just not a justification for suffering, but the fact that it is part of living, and that it makes the good times even better. This next week you'll be running into a character called Elihu, the fourth character, and just out of curiosity, kind of note how he responds to the situation, and also Job having a conversation with God. And again, that review of the history of God with Israel is always interesting, depending on the message someone is trying to get across. So don't get bogged down with all the poetry, but unless you like poetry, but just kind of get the overview of someone's reflection on why we have suffering. And then in the New Testament, we're in the Acts of the Apostles, which is that great book about the story of the early church, and especially how the disciples, who are now called the apostles, the ones sent forth, are spreading the good news, and how quickly the church grows and has to adapt to these new situations. And how it is that Paul got to be an apostle, and how he approaches it, and also where you saw the breaking point there with the stoning of Stephen, which again has another review of God's faithfulness and how it is that Jesus fulfilled that. So notice how when the church is in conflict, seems to be, or when it is being persecuted, is when it grows. When it gets too comfortable, it seems like things get shook up. And also in Acts, keep in mind, always kind of when we get those stories of the apostles encountering groups, whether baptism brings the Holy Spirit or whether the Holy Spirit has already gotten there, and how far and wide they go in a very few short chapters. So just enjoy the journey with the apostles, And also we're going to be getting into Psalms a little bit next week, and look at the Psalms maybe from the point of somebody writing a travel log, a poetic travel log of their visit to Jerusalem. So have an opportunity. Keep on reading, and look forward to reflecting with you next week. God bless.